Try and notice the time too, Denny. Hi there, my name is Valerie Rudd, and I'm here today to talk to you about ways to reduce workplace conflict. Oftentimes in each of our lives, we're faced with an uncomfortable situation at work due to a conflict with a coworker. Imagine yourself in a situation, or think back to a situation where you've had a disagreement with a coworker, and think about how frustrating and how distracting it can be. Conflict can come from many different reasons, such as miscommunication, differences in perceptions, but whatever the cause, if it's not handled and it's not handled appropriately, it can create an uncooperative and an unproductive work environment. So today, I'm here to talk to you about some ways that each of us as individuals can reduce conflict in the work center by being aware of our own actions, accepting differences in others, and increasing our efforts at communication. So let's begin with being aware of our own actions. Most of us usually aren't aware of the impact that our actions have on another individual or other individuals in the work center. Be it positive or negative, if we approach an individual abruptly and abrasively, or if we approach them warmly and inviting, it will affect how they react to us, and it can affect their mood in general. Also, miscommunications and misunderstandings in the work center are another reason for conflict, where the message that you're intending to send to an individual isn't the message that they received. This is due to differing perceptions. Well, the meaning that one person may assign to a word or phrase might be different than what another individual assigns to that same meaning or that phrase. Also, in a work center, conflict stems from when someone just becomes frustrated because they just don't understand what you're trying to say. This can be the cause of language barriers or technical jargon barriers when you have an engineer trying to speak to an administrative assistant. To overcome these barriers, here are some ways that we can become aware of how our own actions affect others. We first need to be conscious of our actions and the effect that it has on other people. And we can do this by being aware of their nonverbal and verbal clues. When you're speaking to the individual, do they look puzzled? Do they look like they're getting upset from what you're saying? Does the tone of their voice change? If you suspect from these nonverbal clues and these verbal clues that an individual is not understanding what you're saying, you can clarify this by asking them a question such as, do you understand what I'm saying? Or if you feel that your message is not being received the way that you want it to be received, you can say to somebody, I'm sorry, did I upset you? And based on their feedback, you can continue the communication until you're sure that your message is being received by that individual. So now that we've talked about ways to be aware of your own actions, let's go on to discuss how accepting differences in others can lead to a better work environment. Because of differing backgrounds, differences in differing cultures, different religions, everybody thinks differently, and stereotypes can often stem from these differences in individuals. Stereotypes can persuade how we view another actions. What we might see as normal behavior for one individual, we might see as an abnormal behavior for another because of a preconceived idea that we may have about them and how we interpret their motives to be. Also, more common than stereotypes is just simple misunderstandings, is just differences in opinion and differences of ways of doing things. So some ways to learn to accept differences in others are to first realize that there's not one best way to do things. With fresh views come fresh ideas. If we're consistently doing things the same way because everybody thinks alike, that doesn't give us much room for improvement or much opportunity to advance. It's also good, another good way to reduce conflict is to integrate ideas. If you've got one individual who focuses their attention on quality and one person who focuses their attention on efficiency, you don't have to have it one way or another. Integrate their ideas through brainstorming and take the best of both worlds so you can come out with the best situation in the end. It's also important to remember that every person, regardless of their differences, has something valuable to bring to the work center. So now that we've talked about ways to accept differences in others, let's talk about how to increase your communication efforts to reduce workplace conflict. It's important to realize that conflict is not always a bad thing. Oftentimes conflict can be helpful in a work environment because it brings issues to the surface that need to be dealt with. So some ways to increase your communication efforts are to tactfully confront an individual with the intent to resolve an issue. Also, ask for feedback. Find out the influence that you have on other people. Find out how other people receive you in a general sense, even outside of a conflict situation, to work on that and improve on being a better communicator. Also, reassure another individual. When you're in a conflict, the other individual probably feels the same way that you do. They probably feel just as frustrated. So reassure them that you're in this together, that you both want the same outcome. So now that we've talked about ways to improve your communications to reduce conflict, let's sum it all up. We've talked about being aware of your own actions and how they affect others. We've talked about accepting differences in others, and we've talked about increasing your communications, all in an effort to make a better work environment and a more productive work environment. Although it's easy to find fault with another individual in a conflict situation, oftentimes it's more effective to look to ourselves and take responsibility for our actions to make an overall better situation for everybody. So thank you very much for your time.